Welcome back to American Government and Politics. This is Professor Jonathan Day. In this lecture, we're going to be looking at political parties. So why do political parties form? Well, first, people form parties to organize large groups of people with similar interest. And so in our government system, when you're trying to get people elected and policies passed, it helps to form groups of people with similar interest. And so you'll have a variety of different groups, and then those merge into bigger and bigger groups until finally you have parties. And so in some countries, you'll have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or more parties. In the US, as you'll see in the elections lecture, we only have 2 parties because of the type of election system that we have. It only allows room for 2 parties. But people form parties in order to organize and to promote similar interests. And that leads to the second reason why political parties form, is because it helps get candidates elected into office who represent that group of people. And so when you have a large group of people who are able to coordinate with each other because they have the same interest, they're able to get someone elected and they're able to get them into office. And then the third reason why political parties form is because organizing the parties actually helps get policies passed once there are people in government. So if you had a government where there were 535 people and no parties, it would be a little bit of chaos. But because you have parties, it helps to organize the elected officials into different groups, and it helps them to push similar interest bills and then be able to vote on those bills. And so it really helps the organization of government when you're formed into parties. And so because of all of these reasons, we have political parties generally in democratic government systems. Okay, so what is a partisan then? You'll hear this term partisan, and a partisan is someone who supports a particular party. And so we measure what this thing called partisanship, which basically allows us to understand what percentage of people are supporting a particular political party. So for example, the percentage of people who support the Democrats and the percentage of the people who support the Republicans forms the level of partisanship in our country. If we had very few percentage of people supporting the Democrats and very few percentage of supporting the Republicans, and most people were independent, then we wouldn't have a high level of partisanship. Okay, and we'll talk about in a little bit later why partisanship is important, but let's talk about the trends of how partisanship changes over time. So there are 3 major changes to partisanship, meaning the level of people that are supporting Democrats and the percentage of people who are supporting Republicans. It changes over different ways. So one, there could be long-term changes. There are also short-term changes, and then finally there are demographic changes. So looking at the long-term trends in partisanship, this is a graph from 1937 to 2007, so it gives us a 70-year slice of history with regards to partisanship. And notice that the percentage of people that support the Republicans are in blue. The percentage of people that support percentage of people who support the Democrats are in blue. The percentage of people who support the Republicans are in red. And you can see how it changes over time. Some of the changes that you can notice is that with particular presidents, say with Richard Nixon in the early 70s, you saw an increase of percentage of people who supported the Democrats and a decrease in the percentage of people who supported the Republicans. Conversely, with Jimmy Carter, you saw an increase of people who support the Republicans and a decrease in people who support the Democrats on into the Ronald Reagan years. You had a continued decline in the percentage of people who supported the Democrats and an increase of people who supported the Republicans. Then you had going back and forth. And then finally, in the late Bush years, you had a reverse, an increase of percentage of people who support the Democrats and a decreased percentage of people who supported the Republicans. So notice that over time, partisanship changes. The percentage of people who support the Democrats changes. The percentage of people who support the Republicans changes over time. This could be with particular events, major events, or with particular presidencies. So why is that, though? Why do you get these long-term changes? Well, when people say that they support a particular party, if that party becomes unpopular for any reason, then there's an increased likelihood that they will not support that party. That's also true with short-term changes. So I take a look at this 2003 to 2004 slice of history, where you see that there are increases by a few percentage points of supporting the Republicans, an increase and then a decrease and an increase. And these few percentage points are major because a percentage of people in the United States represents 1 to 2 million people, and so you have 1 million or 2 million people changing their minds about whether to support the Republicans based upon most likely based upon some of these events. For example, Saddam Hussein being captured, and so forth. Okay, we also have demographic changes in partisanship. So as we see with this 1993 to 2002, again, this is another just 9-year slice of history. And we notice that certain states and certain regions increased their support of the Republicans relative to other states. And so places like Utah, Mississippi, Louisiana, Wyoming, Minnesota, Missouri, Ohio, Oklahoma, Texas, Alabama, Georgia, Idaho, Tennessee, South Dakota, and Kentucky all became more Republican during those 9 years, more relative compared to the other states. They were the most switching over to the Republicans. A lot of these, as you will notice, are in the South. And so over the course of 93 to 2002, we have an increase of the South becoming more Republican over time. And so you'll see this with other regions, right? The West will become more Democratic, the Northeast became more Democratic, and so forth. Okay, so why does party identification matter then? Why does partisanship matter? Why does party identification matter? Well, if you identify as a particular political party, one of the things that you'll realize is that you're more likely to vote for that party's president, which seems to be common sense, but it helps to understand the way presidential election outcomes happen. So let's take a look at this 2012 presidential election with Mitt Romney and Barack Obama. And this seems to be a very representative of presidential elections in the last 20 to 30 years, is that roughly over 90% of Republicans, those who identify as Republicans, will vote for the Republican candidate, and roughly 90% of Democrats, 90% of people who identify as Democrats, will vote for the Democrat presidential candidate. And then the independents can go either way, right? In this case, even though Mitt Romney, the Republican, won the independent votes, he lost the presidential election but won the independent vote. The reason why he lost the presidential election, though, is notice the gap between the percentage of people who voted more were Democrats. So of the percentage of people who came out to vote, 38% were Democrats, 32% Republicans. That means that the Democrats had a 6% advantage on the people who came out to vote in the election. So even though Barack Obama or Mitt Romney won, had a higher percentage of independent voters vote for him, he lost the presidential election because there was a higher number of Democrats that showed up. But the reason party identification matters is because if you identify with a particular political party, then you're over 90% likely to vote for that party's president. But this leads to what's called straight ticket voting. So it's not just for president, but if you identify with a particular political party, a lot of people vote in what's called a straight party ticket or straight ticket voting, which means that they vote for every candidate of that party. So if you identify as a Republican, chances are there's a high probability that you're going to vote for every single Republican on your ballot. Or if you're a Democrat, you're going to go into the polls and just check all the Democrats of that ballot. And the reason for this is because people who identify with a particular political party have something they can go by in terms of who to vote for. Just the same reason why parties form. That you don't have time to research the nuances of every particular elected official's stances. You might not have access to it, might not have time to research it, but you do know in most elections whether they're a Democrat or Republican, and so a lot of people base their voting on that alone. And so partisanship matters a lot in American politics. That also has led to what's called polarization. So polarization is when people who are the difference in people's viewpoints, right? So if people have a difference in view, they are a large difference of view, then they're highly polarized. And what we find is that because of various reasons that we won't go into now, but various reasons, our elites have become more polarized, meaning the people elected into office. So this is a graph showing from 1952 and a graph in 2004, which showed that in 1952, we actually had some Republicans who were more liberal than some Democrats, and some Democrats that are more conservative than Republicans. But in 2004, they had become completely polarized, and there are no Republicans who are more liberal than any Democrats, and vice versa. Okay. We also see this polarization from 1972 to 2022. So over the last 50 years here, the polarization has continued. And the Republicans are becoming more conservative in the Senate. The Democrats are becoming more liberal. In the House, the same thing. Republicans becoming more conservative. And in the House, Democrats are becoming more liberal. So you're getting more polarization that's happening. And this is translating to the American people. What we find is that the American people are becoming more polarized in their views. While most of the electorate is moderate, most of the American people are moderate in their views, the polarization that's happening in Congress seems to be translating to the American people, and the American people are getting more polarized. And what this means is that elections are going to become more conflictual and tense, and that will lead to very tense elections in the future as well. So that is political parties. Thank you so much.